do it live. Okay. We'll do it live.
Drop the mic with Jason Hunt.
So grew up in Collingwood, and then went away to school. Always wanted to get back to our, both my wife and I were from here originally, and then we always wanted to get back, and that was sort of what motivated the online journey.
Nice. So being in Collingwood, anytime I think of Collingwood, I think snowboarding in Blue Mountain. You take advantage of that when you're there?
Yeah, so I actually skied 97 days last year.
Nice.
Last winter, yeah. And so we ski night ski at Blue Mountain, and then ski on the weekends at another place up here. But it's definitely big motivation for being here, and part of definitely part of the sort of the overall motivation in life. And
are you a ski instructor as well?
Yeah, coach on the weekends.
Nice. That's kind of your side hustle.
Yeah, I mean, it's financially terrible, but it's great. It's definitely a negative. The mental energy that goes into it definitely has a negative financial return, but it's totally worth it.
Very cool. So what got me interested in having this conversation with you, John, first and foremost, obviously being local to where I'm located here in Ontario. We don't have surprisingly don't have very many guests from Ontario on this podcast. But your company, Originality.AI, kind of caught my eye. Maybe you can tell me a bit about Originality.AI. And before we get into Originality.AI, maybe talk about your transition from where you were previously, what you did, and what got you into that space.
Yeah. So my sort of the quick background was grew up here, went away, wanted to build a sort of online business to get back to be able to live in this area. All the businesses that I built up had sort of the same focus around content marketing, creating content to rank on Google, to get traffic from Google, and monetize. We built a content marketing agency off of that sort of competency and skill set in the team that we were building to execute that. Eventually sold that content marketing agency and had seen the wave of generative AI coming pre-ChatGPT. And so we had a division of, so the core business was selling human written content. And then we had a division of the business that was selling AI generated content at a significantly reduced price. And transparently, the customers knew that. Well, what the challenge that we saw coming was that there was this lack of transparency between writers, editors, agency, and customer to be able to know, was this content AI generated, human generated? You might have your policies, but how do you really know? And that was the gap that we had seen, sort of again predating ChatGPT.
Yeah, interesting. When our agency started adopting ChatGPT in our everyday processes, we still leveraged our copywriters. We just turned them into copy editors, overnight, pretty much, right? So, you said you sold your content agency?
Yeah.
Tell me about that journey. How did that happen? How did that come to fruition to the point of actually selling it?
Yeah. So somebody reached out. We hadn't been looking to sell. Someone reached out that was looking to buy some of these sort of content marketing businesses to roll up into a larger play. And yeah, timing made sense. Made sense to sort of diversify a little bit on the personal side. So that was what sort of motivated the sale. Long process, grindy process. Clean exit though, in terms of being able to not be my operational involvement was really low in that business, and so I was able to have a pretty clean exit from it.
That makes a world of difference, having minimal attachment to that business, right? Mm-hmm. If you can kind of, I remember talking to a merging and acquisition expert that said, when you go through that process of selling a company, it's every day take a step away. You know what I mean? More and more each and every day, you got to step away from the business. How involved were you in the business when it sold? And did you have any attachment to the business after it sold?
Involvement. So there's a business manager that was running it, and then I would have a weekly one-on-one with them, and then would be involved in quarterly goal setting, weekly one-on-one, and then the occasional dumb idea would kind of come from, I would kind of throw out the occasional dumb idea that would be interesting, that would I get sort of motivated about and see if we could incorporate it. And so it was like, sometimes it go a month with the only involvement being that sort of like goal setting if that fell within that quarter, and the weekly one-on-one for an hour. So that was my involvement. Post sale, involved from rolled over some equity, rolled over some VTB, it's called, so vendor take back, some seller financing, and so very loosely involved, but still associated with it.
So following the sale, you started up your new content agency, which was predominantly dependent on Gen AI for content creation. That didn't cause any sort of a conflict with the old agency?
No, so that sold with, that was a division of that agency that sold. So we were, before we sold, we had spun that up. That was one of my dumb ideas. Turned out to be a decent enough idea at the time. But world of generative AI is coming with Jasper at the time. People are wanting lower cost, okay with it being AI generated. Do we transparently sell AI generated content where everyone knows that it's AI generated? And so that was what we spun that up as a sort of a division of the larger content marketing agency, and it sold with the business.
Oh, got it. So now I guess that kind of, you spawned Originality.AI, and tell us a bit about that platform and how that works.
Yeah, so I think there was sort of two key things that we saw. One, the sort of plagiarism detection tool that existed in the world that was sort of the dominant tool was 20 years old, had never been updated, kind of sucked. There was like no bulk scan capabilities. You had to have your credit card to add new credits. It was not a very good platform. And that was the sort of the industry standard for plagiarism checking for content editors and content writers. And so we thought it made sense to build a improved version of that. And then when we're sort of thinking through, well, what we see this problem around AI, generative AI, and driving transparency between the writer, the editor, the agency, and ultimately the client, so that everyone understands how much, if AI was involved, and how much it was involved. And so we said, can we build something that answer that question? And so we ended up being the first commercially available solution for being able to tell if content was AI generated or not. And then we actually ended up launching on the Friday, and ChatGPT launched on the Monday. So basically two days after we launched, ChatGPT launched.
Now, a lot has transpired in like the Google space, specifically around search engine optimization and AI content. At first, we had a ton of sites originally that we were testing AI content on. We wouldn't test it on client sites for obvious reasons, but we were testing it on our own content, and we saw some immediate, like, really strong results in terms of generating income through Google from all of these sites that we were creating this content at scale. And then it almost like overnight, they all got hit. They all got hit at the same time. And then it's almost like Google did this flip-flop back and forth in terms of what was okay with AI content and what was not okay with AI content. Take us through that entire journey from, especially with you on the front lines of all of this. How did it impact your business?
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch. I mean, Google is facing this existential threat. It is their kind of Kodak moment where technology that they sort of incubated within their company could be the technology that disrupts them and sort of displaces them from their monopolistic position, and kill their incredible cash cow, that the business that they built. And so they need to be this sort of AI forward company for the public markets and their future. They need to be embracing this technology and be AI forward. But they also know that if their search results are filled with nothing but AI content, why would people go to Google? Why wouldn't they just go to the AI that generated that content that would have better knowledge about you? And so they have to sort of, in all of their communication, they need to walk this really fine line, thread this needle of saying, yeah, no, we're an AI forward company. AI is great. Like we are anti-spam, but we're pro AI. Look at us. We're this sort of super tech forward company. But then on the flip side, and that's why some of these updates, and I don't know if that was the March 4th, 2024 timing, where they basically have done these updates where it's like they say we don't want spam, we don't want auto-generated content in whatever form it comes in, without like dancing around calling it AI. But really, who's generating spam in 2025 and not using AI? All spam in 2025 is definitely AI generated. And so the March update where they was more of I'll call it like a psyops update, where they not just did an update attacking the AI generated content, but they did it in this sort of very public way where they went on this like press tour saying we're going to eliminate 40% of spam on the internet, and then did this massive manual de-indexation of up to 2% of sites on the internet that we looked at. So we looked at a sample of 75,000 sites that were generating revenue from digital advertising, and 2% of those sites got manually de-indexed on basically the same day. And that's why I call it sort of the psyops update, where it was like clearly they were trying to make this really loud and this really like public effort of nuking a bunch of sites. The commonality amongst the sites that got de-indexed, the majority of the sites that got de-indexed had the majority of their content being AI generated. And so it was this sort of like very, very clear signal to those that were sort of closely following that if you spam us with AI content, you are going to get punished. While still needing to say publicly, we're just against automated content in whatever low quality automated content that doesn't add value. Without actually saying AI.
I mean, that's a good thing, right? You want to have, good content filling the SERP that's providing value. That's not just AI generated crap, right? That's been regurgitated about 3 dozen times. So it's like I think that is important to have that filter. But at the same time, like if the AI content answer the question that I have, then that's all that matters at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing sort of like evolving now is that if that's the case, if AI is capable of creating content that answers the search query, well, then Google's going to just do that themselves and take that awareness. So I think there's like I don't know if it's debatable, but it's like if all you're adding into the world is text that is able to be auto generated by an AI, then the sort of inefficiency of clicking through a bunch of links to get to that content is going to be short-circuited by an AI providing that content directly to the user. I think that's what we're seeing with AI overview and AI mode now.
At least I can just only speak of my personal usage and behavior. But when I have a question now and I ask Google, it's giving me the answer right at the top of that page. Yep. I'm getting that answer right away. And very rarely will I ever actually click to go view that piece of content on a website. And we're probably seeing that more and more now. What kind of effect do you find that's having on businesses now that are investing in SEO?
Yeah, so I'd say I may be unique case in that like I've been doing SEO stuff for over 15 years. I've never gotten more traffic from Google than we're getting now, and I think that's the sort of saying I have internally is that we need to think about our content marketing beyond words. How do we add value to the user beyond words? Because words is becoming this commoditized offering from these really intelligent LLMs. And so I think businesses are consistently seeing impressions up, clicks down, conversion rates up. So less traffic is getting to their site. That traffic is higher intent and is converting better. I think that's sort of like across the internet what people are seeing. I think there are pockets of strategies that people are doing that are also driving traffic up as well. I think there's still billions of people in the world searching and lots of traffic up for grabs. But overall, the internet is seeing a decline in clicks to websites, a increase in conversion rates of the clicks that they do get.
I think it puts more and more of an emphasis on the power of branding, right? So, the power of not just having like a single channel approach, but an omni-channel approach, right? Because let's just take, for example, if I'm looking for interlocking for my backyard, right? And I have some questions about interlocking and that little blurb at the top of the Google search is linking to a specific website who I also saw in my Instagram feed, and I was retargeted with a Facebook ad. I think it's increasing the amount of times and exposure I get to that landscape or interlock company in this case, which is going to help, to your point, drive a higher quality prospect or lead to that website.
I totally agree. I mean, I think so. Similar kind of size-ish town, for where you live to where I live, and we have bought a pool business here a number of years ago, and we do marketing for it like anyone does, and I think be trying to use a really simple approach of like, hey, here's this one channel that we're going to focus on is not the winning strategy in 2025. And I think it's a branding play across multiple channels is certainly the play for, call it like the local businesses. It becomes pretty clear that seems to be the right opportunity.
Let's talk about some of the tactics that you're deploying for your local business, for the pool business. I think that's very interesting. How are you guys doing? Are you guys crushing it up in the Collingwood area for the pool business? And what are some of the biggest needle movers?
Yeah, it's gone great since we bought it. Had a bit of the COVID lift. I mean, Canada didn't experience the same COVID lift as the US because based on a more hardcore lockdown that resulted in lack of staff to capitalize on the sort of the sales opportunities. But it went great, kind of good growth rate. Seen weakening this year, which is interesting. So just like growth rate has drastically dropped off, but we'll be up still a little bit over last year, but just way smaller growth than the previous couple of years. The marketing strategies. Trying to apply sort of like across the board strategies, so social, paid, organic, and physical mailers. Sort of trying to be like reasonably intelligent and as low effort as possible on applying each of those strategies is our current execution, with a little bit of AI content being used to make it more efficient.
Okay, so and we've seen that as well. There's like this whole, like when the pandemic happened, we used to work with tons of restaurants, tons of dental clinics, and all this stuff. That's basically their marketing budget shut down in March 2020 and thereafter, right? So after that, we started getting a bunch of calls, renovation companies, landscapers, pool companies, right? People were investing in staycations instead of vacations now, right? So we saw the exact same trend with one of our pool installation clients. Crushed it in 2022, crushed it in 2023, 2024 started to stagnate a bit. In 2025, obviously a more challenging year just because the demand is not there, right? As much as it was before. They were smart. They diversified a bit, started selling more products than just doing the simple installation. So had that e-commerce play involved, so generating revenue that way. Just thinking a bit outside of the box to make up for that lost revenue. But in your case, John, what do you, in terms of, do you do anything else to try to, what helps you, like when you're on a down year, what other initiatives, thinking outside of the box, can you take for a pool installation or a service-based business to try to get that revenue back to where it needs to be?
Yeah, so I think I got a maybe funny answer to that, but I think there's businesses that are like in my portfolio, which is mostly like Originality is my main focus now. I still have some websites, still some other businesses. Some of them I'm okay with, like they're healthily profitable. Selling a product in pools that is known to be historically very cyclical in terms of demand, and so I think setting that business up to be healthy in down years. There was a pool company in the area that launched kind of just at the start of COVID, exploded in terms of the number of attempts that they tried to do, finance a bunch of equipment, and then the sort of the demand went out and they went bankrupt. And I think so what do we do? We set it. We know that we're in that type of business, and we set ourselves up such that it can be efficiently run profitably in down years. And so we probably leave some money on the table in the boom years, but are healthy in the down years. That's sort of I wouldn't have that same answer for Originality. That's a like pedal to the metal. How do we grow this thing? But then some of the portfolio businesses, it's not about maximizing growth. It's about sort of accepting the market realities of that business and setting ourselves up for success in all. You shouldn't be surprised that if you have a pool business, you shouldn't be surprised that there's years where there's high demand and years that there's low demand.
I think you're right. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. You know, it is a slippery slope, right? Because I think a lot of business owners panic and fear when things aren't going so great. And what do? They try to, look for that shiny thing passing by, try to play catch up, try to do something outside of what they're really good at and their one thing.
Yeah.
And that can be really a slippery slope to disaster when that core business does not get the attention it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah. So,
and I think it's like, if that was my only focus, it'd be impossible for me to like mentally sort of shift like that. That's just would not work well for me personally. But I think with the fact that it's portfolio business, I can like guide it in a more into a more sustainable model versus a push and grow model.
So right now, how are you going about marketing Originality.AI? That's one of the benefits of being a digital marketer is you can basically pick any business you're passionate about and already have that sort of base of marketing and the marketing background and the resources that you have and the expertise you can leverage. So how are you right now marketing Originality.AI?
Yeah, so we're like I said, I've never had more traffic to properties that I own than currently right now from Google. We have over 1 million visitors a month from Google to Originality. That's our content strategy is sort of framed around adding value beyond words. And so that's how we think about it frequently. And that means digital PR studies. So creating studies about looking at how AI slop is proliferating across the internet, business reviews, user-generated content platforms, scraping that content or accessing data sets of that content, and then evaluating against our own tool, our own AI detection tool, to see how it's proliferating. And so these sort of like primary studies, digital PR studies that we do, and then a lot of free tools. So a lot of tools that are AI checker, or plagiarism checker, fact checker, readability checker, grammar checker, all have a free tool that is very useful, very, very good, that then also leads users that want more into the core tool. So it's a sort of big content marketing effort to drive organic traffic, and studies and tools are two of the key pillars in that strategy.
So if I'm using Originality.AI for the first time, is it pretty simple? I just put in a chunk of content, it gives me a score or a grade, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you put in a piece of content that you're unsure of whether or not it was created by AI or a human, and then it will provide a return saying likely AI or likely human, and then the confidence of that judgment. So it makes sort of a binary classification of saying, yeah, I think this content was generated by AI or generated by human, and then provides the confidence score. And then if you want more information, like how much of it was, or where, or use different models to sort of have different sensitivity, then that's all in the premium app. Premium apps, relatively inexpensive at $14.95 a month, and then has a credit-based system for people that use it heavily.
So going in the back end, how does the technology decipher whether something is AI or not? Is it using is it looking for certain overused AI words? Is it looking at those M dashes? Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
There's some signals you can share in terms of how it detects it.
Yeah, so it's one of the like unsettling things about so it's our own AI. So it's like the good Terminator picking out the bad Terminator, sort of. Not that AI content is bad, but I think the use of it without transparency can lead to problems. So it's not all bad, but there's risks associated with it that people don't want to be blindly accepting, and that's what our tool does. So it's its own AI, our own AI that has been trained on tons of content of human content, tons of AI content, and learn to tell the difference between the two. It is not sort of a simple rule-based process. Like, what is it used the word delve, it used an M dash, therefore I think it's AI, because that would be very easy to sort of remove. We find it sort of one of the, yeah, again, one of the sort of unsettling things about this world of this technology, where if it calls something AI, we can't, it's a black box. We can't understand the reasonings behind it on why it called it. It doesn't communicate that, but we can test it and evaluate the efficacy of it. But the same way that like someone at OpenAI wouldn't be able to say, I gave it this prompt and it gave me this story. Tell me why. And it's like that, the tell me why piece would be this sort of like communication about how the technology is built and the training data set, but it isn't actually why it picked that word.
Okay, so if I'm, let's say, because what I personally do, like when I'm using AI to create any content, specifically, I use it to write. I write a lot of emails, rewrite emails for me because I'm a terrible writer.
Yep.
But what I do is I bake in a lot of knowledge into the knowledge base, a lot of sources into the knowledge base, such as my style of writing, my personality test. I've interviewed myself with AI, so it just really grasps my personality and the way I talk, I speak, and I write to be able to write what looks like authentic content that's written by me.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything along those lines as well? Is this something Originality AI can detect?
Yeah, it can detect it. It might be less accurate than on sort of just straight content out of like, hey, write me a story about X or write me a blog post about Y. It might be less less accurate, but it would still detect it. Do I do the same? Absolutely. I'm an engineer. I would rather think in spreadsheets than words. And it's, there's people in the world that are better writers than sort of ChatGPT. I am not one of them. It is a much better writer than I am. And so, yeah, I use it in a similar way. Sort of have a trained model that or sort of that writes like me, and I can just dump my thoughts into it and say, give me this piece of content, and I use that frequently for internal communication.
So would you use that for a piece of blog content and then put that blog content through Originality.AI to check the score? And have you done that?
So definitely, and it will detect it as AI for me. I will occasionally do that if the value that piece of content is providing, that if the reason that page exists is significantly different than the words, I will use AI to assist with that. We have our AI research team, also based in Collingwood. We moved them from a couple people from different parts of the world that have now landed here. Their English is second language, or third or fourth, and some of their research studies they'll use AI on the site, but the rest of the site we don't allow AI to be used on. We regardless of how it gets sliced, we think that there's still a significant risk that Google will penalize AI, that we've seen it penalizing AI content, and so we still think that on the spectrum of like risk, what's riskier, AI content or human content? Regardless of how it's created, AI content is riskier than human content.
So in the case that, let's just say I create a piece of blog content using my personalized AI, I put it through Originality.AI, and then it says it's a poor score. Is there ways I can leverage Originality.AI to enhance that content to make it seem like it's not AI?
So we don't have a humanizer. So we have a free version that sort of removes some of the ticks, but it doesn't like result in bypassing. I think the sort of efforts to bypass for our advice is that sort of like, we aren't Google. Google might use some very similar technology to us, but trying to trick a third party tool like Originality to sort of bypass it in order to say this is safe content to publish on the web because it won't show up as AI. And tons of people do it on our tool to try and figure out how to bypass. Generally, if content has been created by AI, been identified by Originality as AI, the only effective way to make it not look like AI is to introduce errors. And so that usually is you're objectively making this piece of content worse, and then publishing it, and that's sort of a strategy that we recommend against. I think there's some valid desire to not have your content look like it was AI generated for other platforms like email or social. And so we do have tooling that helps people not for the objective of ranking on Google, but for the objective of that content removing some of the ticks of AI, where I think yours would already have that removed. Maybe it would still throw in its M dashes because it just loves them, and throw in some extra emojis. But we have a tool that helps people, that removes sort of the most common words that are overused, and the M dashes, and the other sort of non-standard things that AI has learned from sort of its formal publishing data set, that
And for
non-formal
social
publishing.
content, for social content,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's
Social
that's
content,
very,
email.
it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I've mentioned a few times in this podcast about a research study that we did that got picked up by the Journal of Brand Strategy. We tested human copy against AI copy, and
Okay.
human copy won on 9 of the 12 tests. It
Interesting.
generated a lower cost per lead, higher click-through rate. And a lot of that derived from the simple fact of not using overused ChatGPT words, M dashes, all that type of stuff, but using a lot of the words that human nuance is really needed. So people, when they're sifting through it, they are scroll stopping at human written content. They're not scroll stopping at the AI written content, right? So it's like even like brackets and making comical sort of references and things like that AI
Yeah.
typically wouldn't make. This is the type of content that was working majority of the time. But just for scalability, obviously having our approach is more of a hybrid approach, where it's using, human direction with the AI. Humans are more involved with it. Really, probably sounds like a great, probably a great research study for Originality.AI, to be honest, to help support, especially for the social posting. Right.
Yeah. So we've done some. So we did a study on LinkedIn that looked at how many long form LinkedIn posts were AI generated, and we saw that it was up to 60% recently have been long form, have been AI generated. Whether that's human involvement, who knows? But were at least generated by AI. And then we looked at the which performed better, and human were performing significantly better than AI. Return on time, it may be interesting to sort of like take that study a little bit further and say, well, was that potentially worth it because of the efficiency lift that came from somebody writing that with AI versus human. So anyways, yeah, we find it infinitely fascinating, sort of understanding how AI is sort of seeping through the world and impacting. And so we love to run studies that use our tool to help understand things.
I had a spat with a guy on LinkedIn recently, actually, because I made a comment on his post, and it was the comment, it was a brief comment made using my AI, right? And he called me out on it. He said, "Is that written by AI?" And I responded, said, "It absolutely was, because AI can write 10 times better than I can."
Yep.
But I explained what I explained about how I do it, and I feel it just gives parity to everybody out there on social. It separates the really good copywriters from the ones that aren't so good, right? But can still make your point, help your point being made, and add more clarity to the conversation. Because I showed actually in this LinkedIn back and forth, I showed my original post that I wrote, and then I showed the version that AI rewrote for me, and asked him which one's more clear. Okay,
right.
You
you understand how big of an idiot I am. Like, how much better that this tool made it for me. I agree. There's for sure. I mean, I have this exact same experience frequently where I'm like, these words are just not like, it's like, I know what I'm trying to communicate. I've got the points here, but it's just not fitting together. And then it's like, throw it into my AI. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how it should sound. That's way better.
It's such a slippery slope, though, because you become so dependent. The AI dependency dilemma, I say, right? Because you just become so dependent on it that over time, you're just going to be a shittier and shittier copywriter, and you're going to rely so heavily on AI, even for coming up with creative ideas, which is going to hinder your creativity. It's like a muscle. It really is, right? And if you don't, write periodically, write your own authentic email once in a while, come up with your own creative ideas, then what good are you? What value do you bring to the table, right?
Right. Yeah, I know it's fascinating. I those are questions that I'm highly concerned about, but definitely not involved enough to have significant opinions. But there's no way that this will not impact sort of how brains are firing. what through both education and we kind of see. We don't love our tool being used within education, but we see tons of AI detection needs within AI control within education. We don't love our tool being used there. But yeah, there's no way this doesn't impact how our brains fire.
Why don't you love your tool being used there in education? I ask because I'm a professor at a local college, George Brown, and
Okay.
I can see, I knew a lot of students are doing it, but I also teach the class is digital, leading change in digital tourism. So I
Right.
emphasize using AI and leveraging it in certain situations, but not grabbing content verbatim, right?
Yeah.
So, but I do see it all the time. Obviously, especially people that are using the free version of ChatGPT, it's very generic content. There's only so many
Right.
variations of one answer you can get. So
Right.
I'm curious as to why you don't like it used in the education system.
Yeah. So, and we haven't talked about it, but the AI detectors are highly accurate, but not perfect. And that means that they are exceptional tools for use cases that require that level of precision, similar to sort of the forecast. Not always perfect, but reliable enough that before you go out, you might check the weather to see if it's going to rain and you're going to what you're going to wear. And it may or may not rain. It's highly accurate, but not perfect. AI detection tools are similar, where if there's a use case that that allows for that level of error, they're great. If they require certainty in order to sort of dole out academic disciplinary action because, hey, this got identified as AI, and you're going to get expelled, suspended, and mark on your record a 0 on this grade. You need to be able to be perfect, and detection tools are not that. They're classifiers that have, in our case, 99.5% accurate on straight AI generated content, and then it'll call human generated content 1 to 3% of the time, depending on it. And that's way too high of a false positive rate for academic disciplinary action. And so I think this is a huge problem, one that we don't deeply understand. And I think the controls in the future are going to be far more around sort of the writing environment controls, eye tracking, big brothery stuff that we don't want to build.
Yeah, it's okay to use it for a guide, but don't be expelling students. You have to get it
Right. It's like it's like a conversation starter that leads to more, and agencies and marketing teams are set up well for that. Whereas academia is far more sort of confrontational, and so that's why we don't like it there.
So let's go into the have you look, John, into the crystal ball and where you see things transpiring in the next year or two in this space of AI generated content.
Yeah, it's going to change. I don't know how. I think the leading more people are going to use AI tools for their search. I think that the AI mode is going to be rolled out globally, my guess. I think if you're fighting for attention with just your words, I think social platforms are going to increase in their usage. User-generated content platforms continue to sort of take more share away from websites that have long form content. I think websites are going to exist to sort of be conversion portals that feed enough information out into the world that LLMs can gobble that information up and then direct people to them. So I think less traffic, higher conversion rate will continue to be a trend that we see, and I think marketing will continue to shift more towards making sure your positioning is loudly and consistently communicated across many platforms, not just your own site.
100%. I 100% agree with you, and it makes it just makes you think about that time frame to conversion is just going to get shorter and shorter with the more noise that's put out there into the environment. People are just going to want to get to that result as quickly as possible and just like dodge through all this other content noise that's out there. And I think you're right? It's like AI is just going to lead people right to the place where they need to go, whether that's that website or that for that service that they're looking for, or whatever it is, that pain point that they have. I think that it's going to shorten that time frame to get there to that destination. I think that's a very good point. John, if our audience has any questions for you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, you can email me, jon@originality.ai, or LinkedIn. You can connect with me there, John Gillham, on LinkedIn.
Awesome. John, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Fun.
Hey, thank you, podcast listener, for checking out that episode of Drop the Mic. If you liked that episode, I would love it if you went on over to your podcast platform and left us a 5-star review. And if you don't want to miss an upcoming episode of Drop the Mic, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.